Amen.
Good evening, everyone. I would like to call to order and welcome you to the Hampton Wilbraham Regional School District School Committee meeting. It is 6:30 p.m. Is there anyone here recording? We will do roll call in alphabetical order. Bill Bontempi. Cheryl Caruana. Sean Kennedy.
Here.
Patrick Kiernan.
Present.
Lisa Murray.
Here.
Maura Ryan.
Here.
Michelle Boudreau. I here.
Just so it's known that Patrick is participating remote.
Thank you. If you please stand, Lisa will be leading us with the pledge of allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We do have a need for executive session pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 21A3, to discuss strategy with respect to collective bargaining if an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the bargaining position of the public body and the chair so declares. Successor contract negotiations, food service. Executive session pursuant to Mass General Law, see Chapter 30A, Section 21A7, to comply with or act under the authority of any general or special law, specifically Mass General Law, C-214, Section 1B. Massachusetts Student Records Law, Mass General Law, C-71, Section 34D. Massachusetts Student Records Regulations, 603, CMR 23 et sequentia. And Family Educational Rights and Privacy Act, FERPA, 20 USC, Section 1232G, and 34 CFR, Part 99, regarding student transfer requests.
Make a motion to go to executive session.
Second.
Roll call vote. Cheryl? Aye. Sean?
Aye.
Patrick? Aye. Lisa?
Aye.
Maura?
Aye.
And myself, aye. We are now in executive session and will return to open session at 6:32.
We need your.
All right, so now we're going to continue with the principal of Minnetonka Regional High School, Steve Hill.
Good evening. Thanks for having us. I wanted to just introduce two members of our administrative staff at Minnetonka. First, Steve Brandrett. Steve is our new athletic director coming to us from East Windsor High School in Connecticut, where Steve was a behaviorist and the athletic director of East Windsor High School. Next is Joanne White. Joanne will be the assistant principal in charge of student activities and working in the assistant principal's office. Joanne comes to us from Agawam High School, where she was a social studies teacher and the principal of the night school. So we are very thrilled to have them. And our third person could not be here tonight. That's Trina Roberts. Trina comes to us. She was the principal of Springfield International Charter School, formerly SAVIS. And she will be in the assistant principal's office and working closely with special education and our new behavior program at the high school.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Yes, thank you.
Do you have any questions for us?
Not yet.
Fair.
Just know if you and I say this to Steve and stuff all the time, but if you get an idea, if you're doing something and you need something, reach out to us. And we can do it. You know, so,
We'll try.
yeah, if we can do it.
All right, thank you. All right.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Enjoy your school year.
Thank you. Steve, do you want to talk about the parking?
Oh, sure. I just wanted your.
That's okay.
Sorry. So I had sent a memo to the superintendent provost requesting that the parking fee for 2022, 2023 be reduced from $80 to $60. That effort comes from conversations that Assistant Superintendent Osborne and I have had about the condition of the parking revolving account, how healthy that is, and also through the student work through the senior civics class. When they go through their 6-step civics project, as young adolescents, they often think of issues that affect them. And so many of their projects were about the parking fee and looking to get it reduced. They had many meetings with me. I did my research in terms of looking at parking fees from the Pioneer Valley at other schools. And we were not the highest, but we were on the higher side of some of the other school districts. So I promised them I would bring it forward. And I think with the economy being what it is and how much gas is and how much these kids are paying for car insurance and gas, that it would be a fair reduction and puts us right about the middle of most of the area high schools and districts.
I make a motion to accept the parking fees as suggested by Principal Hill.
Second,
Any discussion or questions?
We had some students. How long ago was it? Jolene's son came here and they made a presentation to have us slow it down.
Yes.
Yeah.
That was probably around last year, 2 years ago.
2 years ago,
Yeah.
So next time, something like this, have them come in front of us. I want to see them pitch, you know?
They'll pitch 0, which, we would love to do. But there are inherent costs, like today, for example, the company that we hire annually painted all the lines for the crosswalks, the handicap spaces, those are inherent costs. In order to keep the maintenance up, we do crack fill every year, which is, when you see imperfections develop, you apply this substance to try and keep the longevity of the parking spots and ground. So there is a lot of expense put out on behalf of the staff, the students, and the community that uses the building.
What are our anticipated future expenses there?
I mean, largely it's what Principal Hill shared is the lining. They actually lined today. If anyone was in the lot, we had to move our cars a couple times to let them line. They do some crack filling. If there was more significant patching to do, we would do that. Right now, there's a pretty solid balance in that account. I believe it's about $90,000. It'll come down a little bit from the striping and things like that this summer. But, as an ongoing balance, we feel like that represents a pretty reasonable balance at this time. And if we feel like the $60 is a little low at some point, we can bring that up incrementally.
What's the expected life cycle of a parking lot?
I don't know the exact life cycle. It would be in our capital plan. I'm guessing we're estimating at least 20 years, if not more.
So if we're estimating 20 years, we're halfway through. What's the cost to replace the parking lot?
Yeah, I mean, we're looking at somewhere over $1 million. I couldn't take a strong guess at that, but we are looking at somewhere over $1 million.
And if we look at the stabilization fund, which we've had a number of conversations on, that gets us about 2 parking spaces. So I recognize where we are. I would just ask Aaron financially if you think this is the right decision, given the fact that we're somewhere around 50% through the life cycle of this parking lot, and we don't have close to the ability to replace it or upgrade it in a serious condition that would support that moving forward.
I guess I would ask the committee to determine what the purpose of the parking account, the student parking fee account is for. Is it to completely pull up the parking lot and replace it in the next 10 years, in which case we should be looking at what sort of private parking companies charge, which is considerably more to the tune of triple what we're charging. So, I guess that would be a good question for the committee to ponder, is whether, what the intent of this parking account is it to do some ongoing maintenance. This account has already paid for considerable ongoing maintenance that we did not have to pay for as a result of, so lining and crack filling and things like that. So
I
this
think it's-
account over the past 10+ years has saved us some money.
Yeah, I think it is somewhere in our policy, Bill, that isn't it, the fees from the students are supposed to cover patching, the lines and plowing, stuff like that. But there was a line drawn underneath that, not also to include after 20 years of replacement. Bill, do you remember?
It's a percent.
Here.
Longer.
I don't recall a particular policy regarding that. Just to let you know, the front doors to the school are locked. That's why you saw me ambling around the side. So the question that I have is, this is an annual parking fee?
It is.
$80. So it's a $20 difference. It comes out per student to 11 cents a day. And, we have to remember that as a district, we are responsible for this building and the surrounding grounds. And should we choose to, we know that the ongoing maintenance is going to continue, the crack filling, patching, the striping, et cetera. So we know that there's going to be ongoing expenses. So the money that we have in that account right now is okay if they creep up a little bit, but to Patrick's point, makes me a little nervous, because if we get to a point where that parking lot does need to be resurfaced and you're looking at $1 million expense, then you're basically stuck with either going to the towns and looking for a special appropriation, or worse yet, you're digging into educational funds to pay for that. So we have to be very cautious about how we budget. Like I said, it's 10 years down the road. It seems like a long ways away. Everybody knows who has kids. 10 years is not a long time.
Do we maybe want to table this just to see what the policy is? Because I believe it is clearly written in the policy. And then we could bring that up. And if the policy states that it's for repairs, plowing and such like that, then we can consider it. Or if it is a broader language to include all maintenance and all issues with the, is that okay? I'm looking at you because you're the chair.
Yeah, no, I'm trying to think of how quickly I can get the policy up to look, so.
Bill, did you say the phone numbers?
The front doors are locked. Yes.
The back front doors.
Okay, yes.
I don't want this right now.
You don't remember? Like the house order?
Policy.
Yeah.
I wouldn't want to speak
When
for
those kids
policy
came and
language.
spoke, I believe they read it.
Yeah. I don't want to speak to policy language without having it in front of me. But I'd be surprised an annual fee would be attributed to a greater responsibility
Right.
than annual costs.
Yep.
That would just be my assumption.
Just make a motion to table it.
I'm looking, I think that's one of them.
Steve, when do you need to know though for students to figure out what they're paying?
Well, I was hoping for tonight, but we'll punt. We were developing the plan so that students could come in early to purchase their parking permits. When's your next meeting?
18.
Yeah, so that would give us enough time.
All right, I make a motion to table this motion.
Second.
Any discussion? Roll call vote. Cheryl. Sean,
Aye.
Patrick,
Aye.
Lisa. Aye. Laura,
Aye.
myself, aye. Motion has been tabled.
Thank you. I'll see you on the 18th.
All right,
Move on to Osborne.
sure. Would it be okay, we have Sharon Moberg here, if I took item C first? Okay. So you have a memo in front of you regarding adding a few choice seats to Green Meadows Kindergarten. I do want to point out, as I was typing this memo, it was a bit of a moving target. I was back and forth with Sharon. So I want to make sure, in one place it says 4 seats, and down at the bottom I say 5. It is 4 seats, I think, that we're asking for. And you'll notice, I mentioned 29 enrolled students in classes of 15 and 16 with 4 who haven't added. Those numbers don't entirely add up because it was a moving target we were talking. So it would be 16 and 17 in each classroom if we had all 4 of those students register. As Sharon and I talked about, not all 4 of them typically register. And again, that can be a little bit of a moving target. So we're trying to play with what we best expect. So I'll leave it at that if anyone has any questions.
We had talked a bit a few years ago about the optimum numbers for school choice for school classrooms, classroom size. And I believe we wanted 18 to 21 or so for first grade, but for kindergarten, it was under 18, so that it's what we talked about.
I'll make a motion to accept the increase in school choice for Green Meadows. For the
Second. Discussion.
I wondered if
Questions?
we wanted to put in there.
Yes.
That the school committee vote to authorize 5 new incremental school choice seats.
Four.
It's just
4
I
new
apologize.
incremental school choice seats
Yep.
at the kindergarten level at Green Meadows School for the 2023 school year.
Yeah.
Do we have any idea coming from the strategic plan as far as what we're looking at in terms of reconfiguration of the student body? The reason why I say that is because the financial plan that was set up when we had our meeting at Mile Tree basically focused on adding additional school choice seats at the high school level. At the numbers we have 23, we accepted another 40, correct? So that would bring us to 63 students per class. We have a number of school choice kids that are littered throughout the lower grades as well. But if we look at the high school alone, we take 63 kids over 4 years, right? We're looking at 252 kids. Population of this high school at that time in 4 years will probably be around 900, 850. So again, when we look at school choice, we have to be cautious, especially when we take children at the kindergarten level, because once they're in, we have them for those 12 years. What do we do in a situation if we have, let's say we have a movement of 8 or 9 students at a particular grade? Let's say we had 6 at a particular grade level. We might be bumping up against the idea of now needing another section. So I would just caution us that if we are looking at any type of grade reconfiguration with regards to the strategic plan, I would be a little bit hesitant to obligate us to 12 years of school choice.
Especially where at some point they can opt to transfer and create a problem on the other side. So you may be trying to band-aid one problem in one area, but that could become a problem somewhere else later.
And I think
And I think that's what, that's what our discussion last year was, when you came before us and asked about the number of school choice students, and I believe we voted it down. And not that we wanted to necessarily vote it down, but we were trying to think of not just now, but what the future holds too, so.
especially with regards to potential grade reconfigurations and school reconfigurations in this district, it may create more of a headache than we may realize.
No doubt that there are some hard decisions that I think the committee and the community needs to figure out. I think right now we're looking, at the high school, we will be very likely considerably under 1,000 students with those additional choice seats that we put at the high school. Numbers are continuing to incrementally come down. I like to think that these 4 aren't going to be our breaking point with anything we decide to do. But you're absolutely correct. We have to think about, if we're going to do a major reconfiguring, what that's going to look like and how that's going to play out. So,
We also don't know if any of these students could require any types of services. So, that puts us at a risk for the district to have to pay those services out, if I'm correct, right?
So no, we are paid for those services. So we
Okay.
receive additional funding. So we get 5,000 per student plus any incremental special education costs for those students. So, actually the declining model where we may have at some points fewer special education kids or fewer students at Green Meadows and more special education resources relative to the number of students we have, we would realign and configure some of that.
If you just do the math, so we could take 5 more kids in each of the 2 classes, okay? And it will be equal to what Mile Tree has. So right now, we're just asking for half that, less than half that. We're asking for 4. So that would be 2 in each class. It would give us 6. So like Bill had just said, what if 6 kids move in? Well, we can handle 6 kids, but I don't, think that's what's going to happen. I think this would be a great way of rounding it out, getting parity between the 2 schools, getting us some more resources. That would be $20,000 that we can, use. So I think that this is exactly what school choice is for. We don't have to add anything. We're just, by adding these students, we're just filling the space that we have.
I agree. And just want to reiterate that the first year of Minnetonka's opening, we were at 1264. So that puts that in perspective. How many kids are coming? Probably not 250 kids reaching through the doors.
Now we have to bear in mind, though, that if we take the total school budget and we divide it by the number of students that we have, we're looking at an expense of over $14,000 per student. School choice, we get 5. By the way, when school choice was first devised, it was $5,000. There's been no incremental increase. And again, I point to the fact that, if we're looking at anything that's going to be done within the strategic plan to reconfigure the school district, I think it's paramount. I think that it's incumbent upon every single one of us as an elected official to the school committee to make sure that we take care of the kids in our district first. Makes me nervous. If there's ways that we can reconfigure the students in our district that will be academically advantageous and at the same time fiscally responsible, I think it's important that we do that. I would say to our superintendent, John, you got your work cut out for you, because we have to figure out, looking at the recommendations from the strategic plan, whether or not a grade reconfiguration, a building reconfiguration is something that needs to be done. And then figure out how we're going to do it, and then rework those numbers in terms of school choice. But it makes me nervous, as I said before, we have less than 900 students in this building, and 260, 270 of them are choice kids. It definitely changes the flavor of the district, no question about it.
I would say sometimes for the better. Our school choice kids are our kids.
Yeah, but I'd also say if your taxpayers are looking at the money that they're putting out for the education of their students, of their children, and then they're looking at kids coming in from other towns who are not paying our tax rate by far and getting the exact same education, then I think the question that the taxpayers are going to want to ask is there a better way to use our buildings, use our schools, and use our teachers and our resources to better educate our students rather than educating students from outside the two towns.
And then also, I think maybe we can do something like, put together a memo signed by the committee that is asking the state to increase that 5,000, because I believe, how long has it been? It's been over 20 years, right? 20 years at $5,000. So if we just go with inflation, you know, it would probably be close to the $14,000 that we're looking at.
Especially since they're giving people money back now because they have a surplus at the state level, so.
There you go. Is that something that you feel okay with doing?
I mean, I agree with Bill's point that I think we need to look at what direction the strategic plan is going. Or I think we should add any more school choice students.
Yeah, but the strategic plan, any changes that it wants to make is gonna have to be ratified by both towns. And that's a whole nother ball of wax.
Well, the strategic plan, not necessarily, just if there's any implications in regards to
The
the
regional agreement.
John, do you have a question?
I was just gonna weigh in on the point of why it's always been $5,000.
Oh, you know?
I do know, actually.
Great.
Because typically, the school districts that are receiving students are thought to be winners in the game, and the districts that are sending students are thought to be losers. And in the zero-sum game, there are always an equal number of winners and losers, so there's never a political incentive to change the amount.
Very interesting. Thank you.
You're welcome.
So explains a lot.
Any additional discussion?
Aaron, so it sounds like the recommendation, all of the discussion here has been around financials.
Sure.
And it has not necessarily been around other of the intangibles that a school choice program brings. So with that in mind, my question is purely from a financial standpoint. Does a district receive more for a school choice student or a METCO student?
We would receive more for METCO. Our METCO, we have not, over the years, for whatever reason, this district has not re-upped its METCO numbers. We could look at re-upping our METCO numbers. Again, that would probably be a relatively substantial influx of students, and we would need to be prepared to deal with that. You know, we see these 4 as a very small, a relatively small incremental number. And if we did change our configuration drastically, we wouldn't, you know, these 4 would represent a breaking point, right? The goal is not to represent a breaking point if we were to change our alignment significantly. Dr. Bontempi makes a very good point. I think of choice in a steady state. If we keep this district in a steady state, it becomes another potato in the pot, right? So we don't,
Yeah.
we keep classes at a reasonable size in a declining or stagnant environment. Now, if we drastically realign and we do some of the things that have been on the table, you know, if we were to move, like, you know, has been talked about in the past, I'm not raising anything crazy, moving, you know, an 8th grade or another grade to this high school, you know, then you're looking at a need to kind of purge out over time the number of school choice students you're taking, right? Because if you're going to bring 7th and 8th grade here, you certainly can't accommodate quite as many choice students. So that's going to take some thinking. So in a steady state, I will always argue the airlines do this, right? Priceline.com, you can buy last minute tickets for dirt because the airlines haven't sold the seats. The seats are sitting empty. We have seats that are sitting empty. And as long as we don't become a 50% choice school, like that's not where I want to be, or district. And we handle it incrementally as we can retain jobs as well. When we talk about fluctuating class sizes and things like that, how can we not have to, you know, lay people off one year to have to hire them back the next? Because we have erratic class sizes and stabilized class sizes, it's helpful. But if we are going to revamp the entire system, which I imagine is going to take multiple years, right? So, you know, that would, you know, some things would shake out once we start that process. We would have to make a commitment to realigning the number of choice students we take and things things like that, and whether we want to re-up into Metco as well, right? That's a fairly would be a fairly substantial sort of tranche of students in some regards.
Do we control the numbers of students that we accept in the MECO program?
I honestly don't know enough about taking students in Metco, but I would think we would have to, you know, commit to a certain number in order to sort of re-up our numbers. So I'm not, I'm maybe not giving you a definitive yes or no answer to some
No,
of these
but
things, but the problem is that there just isn't. I wish there was.
Echoing your point that you made a second ago, though, it is the idea of doing any type of major reconfiguration in the district is going to take multiple years. But again, we have to realize that, you know, you got to back out of those kids once they're here.
Yep.
And so, you know, it may end up dragging out the process needlessly longer than it has to be if we find out that we have, you know, too many students in a building. So, you know, as I said during that meeting, when we talked about accepting an additional 40 choice students, we're back to the conundrum that we faced in 2017, which was the idea of, you know, or 2018, we said, you know, we need to look at utilizing this building. And this building is vastly underutilized. It is the newest, most technologically advanced building that we have. I can't imagine that we wouldn't, as a parent, I look at the choice between being in this building and being at Wilbraham Middle School, and I was always in favor of moving the middle school into this building, especially looking at where the projected numbers are going to be. So as a committee and as a community, vis-a-vis the strategic plan, we need to look at, you know, where as representatives do we feel, and more importantly is where do the taxpayers feel this town should be at the end of that strategic plan in terms of, you know, if we do want to reconfigure the classrooms and what are they going to look like.
Sorry, I'm doing some quick math. 141 plus 40 is, you know, 180. So we're talking about a high school right now that is under 4 grades, under 1,000 students, even with with choice, you know. And I'm looking at the numbers at Mile Tree in kindergarten, the numbers at Green Meadows. You know, that number is barely a steady state for that. And we will have some students choose vocational and other things when they hit high school. So, you know, when I look at these numbers, I don't project that that these numbers are coming back, right? So the idea that the numbers are coming back is not reasonable in my mind.
So on the trajectory that we have, if you extrapolate out the rate of loss that we've had over the last 17, 18 years, district in 2002, the district was 3,884 students. Today we're below 2,900. So if we extrapolate that going forward 15 or 20 years, you could eventually, you will end up with a district that is over 50% choice.
No, Bill, because when we had, what was it, Mars that came in and predicted it, I believe they predict us leveling out, like,
And we have predictions in 2027.
yeah, up in 2027 that we would be leveling out. So, and they've been right on all along, so I don't see us. It wasn't as that.
It sounds like the
I will say that all of these high schools in Western Mass were built on projections.
Yes.
I live in Amherst, and that high school is wildly overbuilt relative to what's there now for students. This school is, you know.
Well, we get that railway, you never know what can
We
happen.
might.
I'm saying that jokingly.
But the Western Mass is full of high schools that were overbuilt.
But we're talking about 4 students right now.
Ready for a roll call vote? Any other questions, discussion? All right, Bill?
No.
Cheryl? Sean?
Aye.
Patrick?
No,
Lisa? Aye.
No,
And myself, aye. So motion carries 4-3. The 4 additional students.
Superintendent Provost asked me to include in your packet the sort of a quick summary of the choice students that we've accepted this past year, so the numbers we offered, the invites and the numbers we filled. So if you look, Minichog, we were approved 40 seats. We offered 40 and we filled 40. We have a wait list of 5 students right now. Mile Tree in grade 1, we were approved 5 seats. We've offered 5 and 3 have accepted at this point. Stony Hill, we were approved 10. We offered 5 initially. You will see we had 5 and we have come in and we have no wait list. So that covered all of it. So we probably won't need to go to the 10. Green Meadows, we have approved 3 seats at grade 2. We offered 3 and we have filled only 1 to date. Grade 4, 5 approved seats, 5 offered, and 2. So we have no wait list. We've kind of exhausted. I think as we shared, we kind of jumped into things a little later in the game in some other districts. So, you know, I think in the future, we'd like to be a little ahead of the 8 ball on that. And some of that just comes from knowing our numbers. We held off knowingly, not sure of how many numbers we had. So we did take in, but we didn't want to jump into seats until we had a better idea of what the numbers looked like. You know, as we said, we wanted to do this in a responsible manner. Once we offer seats, we can't say take them back. So we wanted to make sure we did that in a responsible manner. Fair enough?
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Aaron, how many guests of the school committee do we have at Minichog?
How many what?
Guests of the school committee.
I don't know offhand. I can look up that number. I did look it up not that long ago, and it was under 10. There aren't a tremendous number.
And I don't believe we have any at any other schools, correct?
We don't have a
Program
it's
to do so.
contract for high school.
Okay. So under 10 is your belief?
Who is under 10? Yes.
Okay, thank you.
All right.
Guests of the school committee, just to clear this for, say, teachers in the high school that want their children to attend the school that they're teaching at. So they become guests of the school committee rather than have to go through school choice.
We
Which means we
cannot
get no
collect
money
choice.
for it.
We can't collect choices.
Yeah, we can't collect choice for it yet.
But Jonathan did clarify that we have the ability, if something that we choose, to request that teachers, if they are choosing to participate or have their child educated in our district, that they go through the choice process. If this is something that they would be amenable to, because it's in our contract right now. And then we would have the ability to start collecting revenue based off of that versus at this point in time, not having the revenue from the sending district.
Fair enough. Okay, great. So I have provided you with a updated budget report. One of our challenges right now has been supply chain. So you will see that there is $156,000 as of a few days ago that remains encumbered. By this point in the year, we would hope that would be much closer to 0. We have a number of items, textbooks and things like that we ordered in the spring that have been slow to ship. Thank you, Sharon.
Thank you.
We also have lighting equipment for the high school that still is, we have ship dates for it that keep coming and going. So we've shared with you the lighting situation in this high school. And we've entertained calls from members of the community and select boards in regards to the fact that our lights are on all the time. I'll share again the default position for our lighting system in this high school is on for safety purposes. So when that system went into fault in the fall, the default position for all of our lights was on. We have desperately been trying to find a solution that was less than $1 million. And we could do in a timely manner. We had that solution. We were able to do it within the budget. And we continue to have supply chain issues. So I believe we ordered these over the winter, the parts, and we are still waiting for them to come in. A couple delivery dates have been missed to date. I believe we have another one coming up in a week in August. We're hoping that it'll come in by then. If not, we're going to have to figure something out. We don't have good answers. You'll notice there's a lot of red and a lot of black. As is usually the case, we have some ups, we have some downs during the course of the year. If you're in black and white, you have some
I get a lot of
parentheses and
black.
some non-parentheses. My apologies. We should make sure we try to print this in color for you. It stands out a little better. I want to also remind you that we made a conscious effort to not necessarily shove things onto the ESSER grants this year. We capped out our E&D. And if we were substantially under budget, we'd again be in that position where we were over our E&D cap. Our ESSER funds, our ESSER 2 funds run through the 2023 school year. Our ESSER 3 funds run through the 2024 school year. By making sure that we don't overtap those, we will have funding for programming and for other projects as they arrive. And when I get into the Stony Hill fire alarm system, that will become a little more apparent. Any questions? Specific? Okay. Thank you very much for entertaining me there. And I guess then I will get into, I'm sorry, I skipped over ratification of the MOU with the union. For Comm, you have it on your screen, and I will quickly walk through the major provisions of this MOA. I will take it number by number. The initial item 1, Article 1, just has to do with the number of stewards the union has representing them. This was actually a request from the union. They just don't need 3 stewards, they need 2, and we're fine. Article 7, item 2, is an extension of the probationary period. We feel this is a mutual interest clause in the sense that it gives us a better opportunity to work with employees rather than having to make a decision in 30 days. It gives us a 60-day window. So we feel like that's better for both parties. The longer we can stretch that out, the better we can work on performance plans and things like that with someone who may be struggling. The next item really has to do with how special functions are scheduled. So right now, the system is an annual system and it's not terribly equitable. So the same people will frequently get the opportunity to do special function work because there's only so much of that sort of work. So this will create a more equitable system of that. Item 4, this relates to blizzard bags, which DESE no longer supports. So we thought this was a cleaning up that made sense. Item 5, this codifies days that supervisors are already working. It just clarifies what the work schedule is for them and allows us to schedule them in a productive manner. 6 speaks to the accrual of leave time. So the 18 leave days that people get a year, instead of receiving them all up front, this is an accrual system, so they accrue them over time. The next item I want to bring to your attention is in the wages. You will see in section 1 below, it says $21.75 an hour. That should read $20.75 an hour. That was a typo. When we put it together, it carried into the union's ratification. They corrected it on their end before they ratified. We're just correcting it on our end before we do so. The next item is wages. You will see at the back, there is a new wage schedule that would be in place for year 1, and then year 2 and year 3, there would be 2% increases in each of those years. This meets the committee's guidance. The next item, item 9, is an item that we feel shouldn't be in the contract, and the union agrees. This relates to substitutes. Substitutes are not governed by the contract, therefore it doesn't make sense for them to do it. The next item is this relates to paying people less during their probationary period. This is onerous for us to manage logistically. It calls for us changing their wages, after 30 days of employment, which can be somewhat erratic for some of our part-time employees as well. So figuring that out and calculating that, it just doesn't make sense as well. If they're doing the job, they should be paid for the job. So there's kind of an equity and a fairness thing. This doesn't exist in any of our other contracts. Teachers are not paid 90% for their first 30 days or their probationary period. The same should apply. The next item really just codifies what's been practiced for a while. The union is aware of this. We are aware of it. It just puts it in writing, and this is consistent with some of our other contracts. The next item, item 12, just eliminates an outdated provision. It's old longevity figures. The next item deals with a situation that came up this year. We don't expect it's going to be an extraordinary issue for us going forward. We had real challenges finding subs for food services this year, and we had some instances where we had some of our kitchens understaffed for multiple days at a time. And the meals need to be served, students need to be fed, the times don't change. It really just meant that people had to work a lot harder to make things happen, and they did. So we're comfortable recognizing that. We don't think it's going to happen very often, but it usually would be a situation where someone was out for a longer period, or someone resigned or left, and we weren't paying their wages anyhow. So we felt it was a pretty neutral situation. So there's some conditions around that. The next item is an option to buy out sick leave time for attendance. So this was an opportunity to encourage attendance among people who did not use their sick time. So it's really a net neutral in terms of their sick time. It does incur a little cost, but it also encourages people not to take sick time if they don't really need it. The next item normalizes pay consistent with some of our other regularly scheduled hourly staff. So food services supervisors have fairly regular schedules. So extending their salary over 26 pays over the summer instead of just school year is an option for us. We haven't done it in the past, but it's doable. It's only doable with people with pretty predictable schedules. So paraprofessionals, we allow it. I believe our clerical, it can do that. But our typical food services staff who work maybe more erratic schedules, it's harder to do with. But the supervisors, we can do that. The next item is just a clarification. So that's item 16. We're just inserting the word work to clarify that it's consecutive work days for posting. It alleviates the situation where a 3-day weekend already costs you 3 of the 5 days for the contract. Everybody's in agreement that that is the intent, that it's work days. And then we just get into the duration of the contract and the completeness of the contract language. That's very typical. Any questions, comments, thoughts?
Now we have to make a motion to accept this. Make a motion to accept the memorandum of agreement with the United Food and Commercial Workers Union Local 1459.
questions, discussion? Roll call vote. Bill?
Aye.
Cheryl? Aye. Sean?
Aye.
Patrick?
Aye.
Aye. Laura?
Aye.
Myself, aye. Motion carries.
Thank you again.
Thank you. Alrighty, now to the hard piece. So this is not on your agenda, but Superintendent Provost shared that this was going to come up. It doesn't require a vote on your part, I believe. So when we put through 10 months ago now, the proposed capital request in the town of Wilbraham, we put through a $30,000 request for Stony Hill School to replace some fire panels and do a little bit of other ancillary work. Once we got to the end of the school year, we actually had part of the fire system fail out of the blue. And it's not related to the panels, it's related to the inner workings or the wiring of the rest of the system. So for the last week of school, we had to post a fire watch. It's simply a person who sits in the hallway, and if the alarm goes off, yells down the hallway. I think the important thing to note is it really was just the lights and the alarms for the hallway alone. All of the classrooms had alarms that fully worked. Every other hallway, including the gymnasium down that hallway, all worked. It would be hard to be in that hallway and not hear or see the lights from the classrooms. But in accordance with the law and code, we did have to post a fire watch. So when we did get into and look at the system, we had an engineer come in to look at it. It turned out that there was a significant amount of work that needed to be done. It was much greater than we expected. There are also some very significant code changes that because we were going to have to dig into the system, we talk about some things that are maybe grandfathered. Once you dig in deep enough into the system, you start having to replace everything. So we are left with the task of having to replace everything. And with some of the changes to the system, we need to even do some of the gas work. The gas lines need to be reconfigured for the kitchen, things like that in accordance with code. So in doing that, we put the project out to bid, knowing it would be substantially more, but thinking it might be upwards of 100,000. We received 2 bids. Big sheet, so I know who it was. But the 2 bids were for 279,000 and 158,000. DMH Electric out of Sterling, Mass was the low bidder at 158,000. The terms of our bid indicated that they needed to have it done by September 30th. Some of the challenges involved in this and some of the things that make it as high as it is, we have to install this system because we are going to be in school. We need the current system continuing to function while they install this system parallel to it. So they have to run all new conduit, all new everything. They can't tear out the existing, and they can't use the existing conduit for that purpose. So they have to put that whole system in parallel, and they can't do it during school hours. So prevailing wage goes up by 25% the minute you start working off hours. So that's a lot of the work a lot of what's in this cost is wages. There's going to be a lot of work to do, a lot of professional wages. It's also, supply chain issues, timing issues, things like that. We talked a lot about, could we rebid this and post a fire watch for longer or do something. We've tried to find used panels to get the system just up and running so that we could open the school. The challenge is if something else goes into fall in the middle of the year, we're then right back down to ground zero. We do have, resources in ESSER funds, and I think also in our facilities revolving account, which, we receive rental fees in all of our school buildings in some capacity, with the understanding that things are going to come up and we're going to pay for some repairs, some maintenance, things like that. My suggestion would be, and this is in consultation with Dr. Provost, I think is an agreement.
Absolutely.
That we go ahead and accept this bid and move ahead post haste. It is going to cause us to reevaluate future projects. I know Mile Tree is the next fire alarm system that we need to redo, and we may at least be forewarned and know that it's going to be more significant. I think it's also important for you to know that we have been in constant contact with the Wilbraham Town Administrator, Nick Brao. He is looking into any of our past capital projects that we may have not fully spent down, and seeing if there's an opportunity to look at recouping some of those funds and reassigning them to this. He is also going to talk to the select board about whether, this is maybe an extraordinary capital type situation. Dr. Montempi.
Yeah, that was actually the point that I was going to make. So
Okay.
this is a capital expense for a town-owned building.
Yep.
According to the regional agreement, the school district is responsible for the first $25,000 of the expense.
Yeah.
And the town is responsible for the remainder.
Okay.
So I would have discussions with Nick Bro ASAP about this, because this is not an expense that should be encumbered upon by the school district. This should be the town of Wilbraham.
Okay. And I guess I will read into that and I'll talk to Nick. I think when we put this through for the capital process, which was 9 months ago, we weren't anticipating this, and we put it through thinking it was going to be the third. I don't know where that falls.
It doesn't matter.
Okay.
It doesn't matter. I mean, we had a situation 3 or 4 years ago where the elevator
Okay.
at Wilbraham Middle School went down.
Okay.
And it wasn't a question of if they were going to pay for it. It was just a question of how it was going to get paid through them. Because that, like I said, these are town-owned buildings, so you can't expect the district, because what you're doing is 80 cents of every dollar that you're spending out of this district is paying for a town-owned building, but 20 cents out of every dollar is being paid by Hamden. Similarly, if you had a capital expense at Green Meadows or at TWB, I don't think the taxpayers of Wilbraham would be too excited to be putting 80% of the bill for that. So I would definitely reach out to them and let them know that that has arisen.
Okay.
And that they're going to have to make some modifications to be able to cover that cost. We will be on the hook for 25,000. That's the regional agreement.
So with that in mind, because I know as we're getting into the new budget cycle, it would seem prudent that we make sure that any of the other capital expenditures that we were looking at, not counting, like obviously paving, but building expenses, because it seems to me that maybe we're looking to just Band-Aid and not looking at the whole thing. That I'd be interested, not for the detail right at this point, but to understand codes change every year, but those codes come out in a big thick book similar to these, and somebody's got to be looking at them. So I think we need to make sure that we're also meeting those codes if and when we can. I realize age of buildings, they get grandfathered in, but when we start talking about capital expenditures for even the next 5 years, maybe we need to be allotting for more money instead.
Yeah, we will be re-examining all of our
Yeah.
capital projects in light of, really supply chain
Sure.
costs have gone up dramatically. So we do need to re-examine all of those.
What were the costs again? You said the two bids were 158, and what was the other two?
279.
279. Dr. Montempi.
The next question is, have we looked at any contingency plans? I know the way that the way supply chain issues are running. And your wage costs may go up significantly if your supply chain issues become strained. Have we looked at the possibility of temporarily relocating Stony Hill to TWB in the short term? Talking to Lower Pioneer Valley to see if we can alter bus routes. That way they'll be able to get the work done faster, because they won't have to run the conduit and it'll be less expensive. I know it's a hardship for the teachers, it's a hardship for the students. I just don't know with the clanging and the banging, with all the stuff that they're gonna be doing to put this in the disruption in the education, it might be more beneficial for us to consider using TWV for a couple of months to be able to allow us to get the work done faster and not interrupt the student's education.
And not have to pay that 20%, 25% premium. That's, have we, usually Kate Belsky has been here so long, I usually ask her, but have we ever done anything like that before? Relocated students to another school or something like that while we did renovations?
I don't think they've ever done it across town lines.
Not my time.
Yeah.
Maybe another room in the building, but
Gina? You're Gina? Okay.
Happens. I mean, I know Peter used Memorial, right? For a while, I know,
Mhm.
was it Quabog, they used Palmer for a while,
Yeah.
when they had a mold issue, so. So I haven't heard of.
So I think that would be definitely a discussion to have at the, the leadership level of the building. Talk to Monique and see, like I said, we may want to just have them weigh out the cost to look at, if you could just go in and rip everything down and put it up new, what's your time estimate?
I think Monique just has her office the way she wants it, though. I'm not sure.
That's important.
I'm like,
Nice
I'm pretty sure
big
some of that
stack.
staff has
Yeah,
already been there.
Yeah.
I'm joking. I was there the other week, though, and she's got it all planned out. She's done a
and
good job.
I would just ask out of the kindness that it is the decision to use or consideration for TWB
Contact
to
the
reach out
select
to the select board, just
Absolutely.
courtesy call. Even if you want to consider using the building, maybe that they could offer other solutions or assistance. I don't know. They'd just like to know.
Completely agree. I
Please
would
and thank
do
you.
that. I think after YMCA, I think we've been pretty clear that we should reach out to them first.
And I think a contingency like this would definitely be instructive to Wilbraham Finance Committee about the usefulness of TWB, because if we chose to shutter that building,
So
we
you
wouldn't have
actually,
the opportunity. we wouldn't have-
having
wouldn't have
those
the
dollar amounts, when you talk to Nick, that'll say huge if it's gonna save a lot more money versus, you know what I mean, paying that whole bill. But it'd be interesting to understand too, if there's how much we could pay to get the company to finish it quicker versus, without incurring additional costs as far as labor goes. To see if they were able to do it sooner or quicker.
What is the actual time frame? They projected.
They're projecting, when we bid it out, September 30th was our hard end date. So we're looking at a month. I don't know if they have, daytime, I don't know if they could do it faster, but I think they could rip out the existing system first and not have to do double duty.
Did they advise that they had stock or had inventory to be able to do that?
They
To do the
better.
work? No, but I mean, a lot of times they figure that
Yeah,
they'll
have the
lot
dates.
into some time to do it, but
Yeah, I mean.
then I don't want to have them come back in and say, oh, we don't have this panel, that panel, whatever.
Yeah, I mean,
Switch this, that, switch.
Yeah, I mean, that would be a big issue with OSD and the state of Massachusetts. If they were to fail on drastically, I mean, it wouldn't be unheard of for them to say they need a couple more days. But if they were to drastically fail on the end date,
That I just, I see that in what I do every day, so I just.
yeah,
don't
we
see
would have
this.
grounds to report them to OSD as a,
Okay.
yeah. Not that that helps us, but it hurts them a lot.
So you'll reach out to Nick.
Yeah, I'll talk to him tomorrow.
Okay.
Hopefully we'll talk about TWB and other options.
I get it.
And then we'll circulate.
Sure.
Sorry.
Good luck with that.
I think those are my items.
Perfect, thank you very much. So we're now moving on to public comment. Did anyone have any? Okay. Would anyone like to make a public comment? In the audience? You can make,
Not for public comment.
okay, so we'll move forward. Not yet, almost. Okay, we will move on.
I know she's on the agenda for that.
Yeah, we will move on to new business. We're just gonna go over our school committee norms. So the last time that they approved and you voted, the school committee voted on norms for approval, which was January 17th, 2019.
Sorry, I was just looking for the, just out of respect for Gina, because she's here, would there be any interest in just moving her up so that we can have her speak and she doesn't have to stay for balance of the meeting?
Sure.
Is that all right with you? If we just move you up to now, so that you don't have to wait through the,
Okay, is that, because I'm part of the superintendent's report. So is that-
there's no objection.
No objection.
Thank you for that.
Hi, Gina.
Hello.
Did you get that number I sent you?
My phone is dead.
Oh, right. Exactly.
So, plus I wouldn't have been checking my phone for me.
That's in.
Thank you. Thanks for that. Cold in here and snow. So I have been asked to come and talk about our strategic plan and our process and where we are right now. And Dr. Provost, I know is going to jump in as well here, but I would like to share. We won't go, and we won't kind of go back to the beginning point because I think you're all familiar, and some of you here and part of the process as well. So we have been moving along with this for this past year. Our committee has met regularly with the Mars facilitators, and we have followed their plan around the development of narrowing down, using all the data that they had collected, and again, without going into all of the steps that were taken, taking the data from the surveys and the community forums and the SWOT analyses that you and others participated in, generating this data, and then the team working very hard in order to condense and consolidate and really just pull out those key themes and what Mars referred to as sub-themes. And so from that point, as we move forward, we were left with creation of mission and vision and values. And those also moved along in a parallel way. And when the team, the committee met for the last time on June 22nd, it was, I believe, with the focus of the values piece of that. And so that is where we ended that aspect of the work, which then became the next phase of bringing that forward, Mars kind of collecting it all, and our admin team meeting at the end of June to consolidate those key themes and sub-themes into what is now in the process of development of an action plan around that, around the key goals, what are the action steps, and what is the timeline. And that is basically where we are at. We are moving forward. We are moving forward, making steady progress. It is a back and forth with Mars as they continue to assist us in, first of all, there's some formatting pieces to this as well as content pieces. So these things are happening. And we are really looking forward to a plan ahead where we would be able to be bringing our committee back together. And we have a tentative date that I am going to share. Again, recognizing that there are a few disruptions in the calendar, we are hoping to bring the committee back together August 31st or September 1st to be able to look at what is a draft of the finished product, the product of the process, as well as the content of the strategic plan. The committee will take a look at that. They will have an opportunity to reflect, making sure that the things that that were important to them have been translated into the process, and to celebrate the incredible work that they have done. And then, as I understand it, it comes to you all for a final approval, and we would really hope for that to happen. I worked on a couple of dates here, but I'm not sure which one is accurate. One of the September meetings, the 15th or the 22nd, 15th. Okay, thank you. So that is where we're at. Progress is continuing. We are very eager to have this done, and I know you are equally eager to have it done. And we are working diligently towards that outcome.
Gina, so you're gonna get together, finalize the plan, and then you're gonna get it to us. When it's presented to us, will we have the committee here so we can ask questions? If we have questions, would we?
That's my intention.
Okay,
I'm sure that not all 36 members of the committee will be here, but I want to get a good showing of that group.
yeah, that's great. Because I'm sure we'll have some questions, because, coming to us and saying, here's the blueprint for where you want to go, with us having minimal input. I mean, other than at the start, to see how it goes. I know that Maura and Bill have been, participating and voicing the concerns of the committee, at that. But I would assume that, if for some reason edits and stuff would be made by the school committee, is that something that we have the ability to do?
Well, ultimately, the school committee has to adopt the strategic plan, so you have the opportunity to make amendments, or you could reject it. I mean, I can tell you that it represents a tremendous amount of work from what I've been able to see.
Yeah.
Just some of my impressions since I've been working with drafts over the past couple of weeks. There's a lot to it. I think one of my first impressions was that it's been a long time since the district has had a strategic plan. I understand it's been basically 20 years. And it felt like the plan was trying to jam 20 years worth of improvements into one 5-year cycle. So there's a lot there. I guess I'll just note from the beginning, there may need to be some grace in terms of trying to get it all done within a 5-year frame, but we'll do our best. The part that I've added is trying to figure out what those 5 years might look like and if it's possible to get it all done within 5 years. The other sort of impression that I got from reading it, which Dr. Khan can say whether or not it's correct, is that at some point it seems like groups were working on individual themes individually. And so what I try to do is look at, so if I'm and the district is going to be focused on implementing all of these different themes, how do we put it together in a sequence that makes sense? Some things talk about groups reviewing the results of surveys. So that means first a group needs to be appointed, and then a survey needs to be developed, and then the survey needs to be administered. So in some cases, there were sort of logical progressions that I could work out. So when you get the document, you'll see two parts really. You'll see what the strategic objectives are, that the focus areas, and then you'll see an implementation plan for how we intend to go about it.
Yeah, I didn't mean in any way anything I said to come across as that, we don't have faith in the families that put their time into this committee and school committee members. It's just a question. And also, an interesting point, when does the 5-year plan start? Is that something we need to decide, or is that starting right away, or is that starting in a year? I mean, because we have this plan, we have to figure out how to implement it, and then we need to implement it. So,
well, the plan is designed to begin this school year, which is part of my sense of urgency around getting it to the school committee as soon as possible. We are already missing some months of what we could have done in the first year. I will say that even though some of the items in there haven't, the committee hasn't seen the plan, it hasn't voted on it. Some of the work is being done. For example, one of the items was around the superintendent collaborating with the Lower Pioneer Valley Collaborative on identifying a DEI coordinator to be shared among the districts. So I was involved with interviews this afternoon related to that. So, even though it's not fully approved, I'm still trying to look at some things that I can get done at this time.
okay. Okay, great. Thank you.
And I think you'll see that there's some overlap for stuff that was sort of started last year by Al, as far as like what processes the district is doing. But they were already kind of working towards that because, families have been asking for things for a few years now. So some of that I think it's gonna be a working document. And correct me if I'm wrong, Gina, Mars had said that it would be a live document. It's gonna forever change. I mean, it shouldn't go from A to B like overnight, but we'll evolve it as we need it to. It's a live document that will constantly change.
Really, the strength of a strategic plan is that it facilitates exactly what you're saying.
Mhm.
And we talked about this a little bit today, that if someone had a strategic plan 5 years ago, it didn't include COVID.
Yeah.
Right. And one of my weaknesses may be over relying on sports analogies, but I think of it as a game plan. And so it's how you intend to approach the next 5 years, but you're going to have to make halftime adjustments. Some things, and part of that is because no one has a crystal ball. And the farther you get out into the future, the less and less precision you have with anticipating what you're actually going to be dealing with at that time. But it at least gives you direction.
If it doesn't empower course correction, then it's not very strategic.
Like the school improvement plans that the district brought, all of the principals brought forward. I think you'll already see that that's stuff that will come up. Or it was items that were themes or asks to some degree that they're already implementing that, right? So it's an
Right.
improvement, but it's kind of, they found that was very important to be part of the strategic plan. So that it was visible, not just for them to say for their improvement for this year, but the next 5 years, that they're gonna keep their eye on that ball. They're gonna keep making those adjustments as they need them. So it was a really good experience to hear from all the different levels of, community members, teachers, parents. I just think it was really interesting to get all those people together, and the amount of information that we broke down and put together was amazing.
And we were stakeholders, investors. It really is an investment. And I will say, and Dr. Provost in a short time has already made some very tremendous contributions in terms of exactly what you said, the visualization of how does this roll forward. And in fact, our Mars facilitators actually complimented that approach. So they've kind of taken notes from you.
Helps that he had some experience with a couple.
That's true.
So,
Excellent. Thank you.
Anything else?
Thanks,
Thank you very much.
I'm gonna go warm up the bunch.
I'll just continue his-
Sure. So no one can get mad in the future when we go out of order, since we're doing this entire meeting out of order. Yes, we'll continue. There's sprint.
Okay.
It just makes sense. If
No,
we're
I
already
know,
there.
I'm just saying. Okay. Get up in arms about it.
So as has already been discussed several times this evening, we are in a situation of declining enrollment. In your materials this evening, we have the projected October 1st count, which best guess at this point is 2,817, which would be about 85 fewer students than we had enrolled last year. Still getting used to enrollment patterns in the district, but it appears that most of the reduction in the overall number comes from reduced enrollment at Green Meadows and high school. Your packets also included a draft entry plan for discussion. For the public, I'd like to explain that best practice for a new superintendent is to spend several months engaged in the process of learning about the district and building relationships with people with whom they'll be working. Having a thoughtful, inclusive, and comprehensive process for joining a school community can set the stage for success in the work that we'll undertake together. So I plan to approach this work with an open mind, open heart, and open will. And I've outlined a number of ways in which I want to learn about the district and make myself accessible to people so they can learn about me. In some cases, entry plans culminate in a list of strategic priorities for improvement. However, as we just heard, the district is engaged in a strategic planning process for nearly a year and is well along the way to documenting its next 5-year plan. So if you think about the strategic plan as describing what needs to be done, you can think of the entry plan as my process for building awareness and the relationships I'll need in order to do the work effectively in this context. I want to build on the strong foundation provided by the work of the strategic plan, as well as the foundation the committee gave me by authorizing me time with former Superintendent Ganem to help with the transition. I'd like to thank you and him for the gift of that time. Even though this plan is only in draft form, much like the strategic plan is only in draft form, I was able to accomplish many of the activities listed during my time with Al, including meeting with town managers and fire and police chiefs from Hamden and Wilbraham, meeting with the Hamden advisory members, meeting with the president of the union, and many teachers, parents, and others through sort of the soft launch of the entry plan that we did through my office hours that are taking place in central office. So tonight, I'm looking for your feedback before I publish the plan and continue executing it. I'd welcome your thoughts on the overall message as well as the approach. Additionally, I'd like to let you know who, I'd like you to let me know who or what I might be forgetting or leaving out of the plan. Engaging all stakeholders in multiple ways and demonstrating strong interpersonal, written, and verbal communication are indicators for superintendent performance. So if you see gaps or blind spots on what I'm planning to do, please let me know now. So with that, I'd like to open it to thoughts about the plan.
I liked it a lot. I thought it was good, very general, very broad. Yeah, I don't at this time have anything to add.
I'd just like to add, over the last few weeks, there have been staff who've been very valuable to us who died, and also staff who have husbands who's died early. And I was able to go to the funerals and the wakes for those people. And I was struck by the amount of young people in our, and it didn't matter the denomination of the churches, in our churches in both towns. There is a lot of our students who are taking part in not just religious education, but doing good works and building their faith. And I think I was glad to see you were going to go to, is it Bethlehem Church? I think going and reaching out to the parishes and the churches and talking to them about the youth of our district and how we can foster a partnership.
Good luck.
I'd just say the only thing that we really need to make sure this year we do better than we've done in years past is communication is huge. Communication beyond just our meetings. I know that most parents are the only ones that see the announcements that you send out. I think sometimes the community wants to kind of know what's going on. We never really use social media to a point. I know it's kind of like this, do you put it out there, do you not put it out there? But it's making sure that the seniors in our community, the folks that are taxpayers in the community, even folks who work in the community, just kind of know what's going on, create some visibility for them. I mean, it's always nice when there's fundraisers going on and you go down Wilbraham Road towards CWB when the 18 to 22-year-old program is doing something, there's signs, you know, that there's fundraisers, you know what's going on. There's a lot of people in the community that want to continue to give and support all the different programs that we do. I don't even think we as a committee do enough to talk about some of the sports teams, the fundraisers that are happening, being able to contribute to some of that, just kind of putting the word out there. There's a lot of people who want to be able to support the students and to support our community. So how we do that, we haven't figured that out yet, but maybe having another head in this mix can help us come up with a better way.
Sure, I will continue thinking about that, but I'll take this opportunity to say my Twitter handle is @John_Provost, and there was a tweet about that car wash yesterday. So that is one way I'll be trying to reach out to a broader audience. I will say that that may not be the best way. I'm not sure that Twitter is the thing, but if there are other social media avenues where you think people are really active, please let me know and we can strategize around that.
Facebook has a lot of different, I will say there's a large following of folks in the community that are on Facebook. I don't know if we can reconsider bringing back the Minichog updates through the Facebook page. Parents tend to share it. I know that there's been parent groups for younger students, kids who are graduating in the future. They have their own groups. But I mean, just as an overall, I think it could allow you to have a bit of a presence. Again, I'm not a whole 100% saying that social media is the way to go, but we're gonna try to reach everybody any way we can.
Killer on TikTok.
I was gonna say, yeah. Who are we
Just gonna
reaching? Which are
Add your location to your Snapchat. You're good to
Yeah,
go.
it's not the grand.
We're gonna love you. But,
We want to see some TikTok dances.
Yeah.
I may regret asking for that.
I thought your entry plan was very honest, so I appreciate that. And the other thing is, I was thinking also just touching base with YMCA and Park and Recs in both towns.
Thank you for your feedback on that.
We'll be looking for those TikToks.
I don't really want TikTok.
I'd like to see Aaron get in on some of those too.
Yeah.
Whole admin staff, right?
I think Aaron's got some sweet dance moves.
So finally, I direct your attention to your materials where you'll find the program for the 28th Annual Executive Institute, which is the premier professional development event of the Massachusetts Association of School Superintendents. As is always the case, this was held in mid-July on the Cape, which is a nice place to be in mid-July. The focus this year was looking ahead, promoting equity, wellness, academic achievement, and a culture of care for all. Along with my colleagues from my prior district, I offered 2 sessions, and then came the backlash, and there isn't one solution. The superintendent's reflections on equity efforts. First, I'd like to thank my co-presenters and collaborators for sharing their time, vision, and energy. Next, I'd like to thank my fellow superintendents for choosing our sessions from among the many options that were available. Reflecting on those sessions and the conference as a whole, what made the greatest impact on me was the fact that this was the first year it was felt that the security detail was needed. I'm not going to opine on that because it's a fact that speaks for itself about where we are. Instead, I'd like to ask everyone here and those tuning in tonight to take a moment to identify something for which they're very grateful. In his wonderful TED Talk, Brother Stindl Rast says, if you're grateful, you're not fearful. And if you're not fearful, you're not violent. So I'll start the practice by saying, I'm grateful for my new job. And I'd like everyone listening to help make our district and the world a better place by telling someone something that they're grateful for before they go to bed tonight. You can consider that your homework. That's my report.
Thank you, thank you.
I'll never get it.
Okay, so we will go back to new business and doing the school committee operating norms. The last time that they were voted was in January of 2019. So I thought it might be a good time to go through these. I don't know how the discussion has gone in the past. I don't know if we just kind of talk about each section, but I thought it is important to remind ourselves as a committee, you know, and this is how we are supposed to operate, and we should really strive to do these things. So the first section, if anyone has any comments to make, I'm not going to read them all.
No,
So we all have them.
yeah, a couple of comments. Number one, if we read the first sentence, we'll make every reasonable effort to protect the integrity and promote the positive image of the district, one another, and the school committee as a body. And if we read down how we relate to one another, we agree with the responsibility of the school committee to set the tone for the entire school system. We will make every effort to promote a positive image for our school system. Superintendent will visit the community, etc. I have a problem with what happened in our last meeting with regards to Lisa Curtin and Aaron Osborne. 2 weeks prior, Mr. Kiernan had asked that the curriculum directors.
We have to stick to discussing.
I'm giving you an example.
But I think it's important for us to, we can add that as an agenda item, But I think that it's important that we kind of review the
I just-
operating.
Yeah, I
norms.
disagree, because if we're talking about the norms, I know it's uncomfortable to talk about it.
No, I don't find it uncomfortable.
Yeah, but I think if we're going to invite administrators to be part of our meetings, I think that they should be informed of discussions that would potentially entail them. I thought it was very unfair. I think that Lisa and Aaron were really caught off guard by the substance of the discussion with regards to those positions. It really wasn't necessary. Those discussions could have been had behind, could have been had in a meeting with them, in an office somewhere. It's not something that we had to parade out in front of the school district in a public meeting. I think it was disrespectful, and I disagree with how that's done. We've done it before. We've done it before where we bring an administrator in and we bring an uncomfortable or a confrontational situation to them. And then we basically watch them try to battle their way out. That's not the way, this committee is supposed to run. We're supposed to have mutual respect. If there is an issue that comes up and it's going to involve a decision made by an administrator, the administrator should be given ample notice and be told what the substance of the conversation will entail. And if we're going to have a list of norms and we're going to vote on it, we better recognize what that is. Now, I may have 6 members that disagree with me, but I don't think so. And I think that it was very, very disrespectful what we did, because Lisa and Aaron could have been made aware of that conversation. And it's not something that needed to be brought up in front of them in a public meeting.
So you don't like item 1, we will make every.
No, I love the item. I just think we need to actually follow it.
So the only part of that you mentioned that I would disagree with is the fact that we are asked as a committee to not have conversations that would warrant 3 or 4 of us to abide, because we have to abide by open meeting law. So we're required to do business, and I understand what you're saying, but if something is going to be brought up, the general public and our constituents have the right to understand what's going on, and it should be discussed in a public session.
I don't disagree with that. I'm just saying, why were they not aware? Why were they not made aware of what the scope and content of that discussion was? You don't have to discuss anything other than to say, hey, listen, this item is on the agenda, and there's going to be a question of why you have this money allocated for stipendiary positions for curriculum directors. So I'm not saying it's not discussed. And if we want the district to be reflected in the best light possible, the last thing we want to be doing is setting people up and taking shots at them. I just don't think that that's appropriate.
I understand.
So if a meeting is going to run appropriately, I think that as a district, we need to be respectful of every single person that attends these meetings and make sure that they are aware that if they're going to be the focus, or if their decision is going to be the focus of the discussion, that they're made fully aware of what the scope of that discussion is going to be, so that they have an opportunity to prepare.
So I believe that's part of the reason why the superintendent and the chair of the school committee have a meeting to discuss what the agenda is. It's not that someone just creates the agenda and then just gets sent out. There's a meeting that actually happens about that. So
Well,
at
I
some
understand.
point,
Yeah, I understand. I was the chair. So
I
I
didn't
do
mean that, I
understand
didn't mean
that,
in any way.
and every effort was made to make sure that if an agenda item was to be brought up, and I think I can speak to, and I know Patrick and I have had discussions about this. Cheryl, you've been chair. It's very unfair to show up to a meeting and just all of a sudden lob something out there that nobody's heard anything about and catch people off guard. It doesn't create a good image for the district. Okay, if we're going to be working together as a team to make education better, we have a curriculum director that makes a decision with the finance director with regards to how best to develop curriculum. I think it's important that we hear them and we listen to them. But it's very unfair to bring it up at a meeting and just hit them with it point blank and not give them an opportunity to prepare or even know that that was going on. So I would say that going forward, there shouldn't be any surprises, okay? The idea, you can have a robust discussion, but it's even more robust if the person on the other side of that discussion is aware of what that discussion is going to be
And has time to prepare. I would also, if you read these over, the operating norms the enforcer of the operating norms is yourself.
Mhm.
Okay, I think that it's been the tendency on this committee to impose controls to try to police the operating norms. So, it's been said that, politics in Massachusetts is a, contact sport, it's not for the faint of heart, and we have great representation around this table of people who take that very seriously. So I would say we should shy away from judging people whether that they are operating within the norms or not. It's private conversations you can have, and sometimes things do get passionate. But I'm all on the side of having some robust conversations, and maybe passions will flare, and I don't necessarily think that there's anything wrong with that. Sometimes at the end of the day, you remember as a kid, you get in a scuffle, you shake hands afterwards, and you go back on with your day. So I would just wanted to bring that up.
So I don't believe that it's solely as the chair, I do not believe that it's solely my responsibility to police the operating norms. I believe that is our responsibility as a committee, and I believe that we should hold ourselves and each other accountable for upholding them.
But
So
that's
what-
your interpretation.
Right, and I'm entitled, because I am speaking, I'm entitled to be able to share what I believe, just as you and Bill have had the opportunity
Also,
to
we're
do.
having a conversation. Sorry.
But I mean, so it's just about respect and treating each other with respect, and I understand there's passionate conversations, but things have gotten aggressive, things have gotten hostile, and we can't always hide behind that word, it's passionate. Because I think that oftentimes we've sat around this table and people have been genuinely disrespectful. And I just think, again, we're sitting here and we're supposed to set the tone, and I think that we need to do a better job with that. And I think that also begins sitting around this table. So Bill, you just gave an example about being respectful to administration, but I think we also have to be respectful to one another. And just because you may not agree with what another member may say, it doesn't mean that you should be rude, disrespectful, aggressive, or hostile, or anything.
What if I was,
Or even just be condescending or like flippant. I mean, it's just one of those things, and it's, if you're speaking, we're listening and we're letting you finish what you have to say. And I think we owe each other, every single person around the table, that same respect. And I don't think that's asking for a lot.
are you insinuating that I was hostile, aggressive,
No,
condescending?
I'm giving examples of, I wasn't pointing at you, I'm saying in general, sometimes these passionate conversations, and I understand that people have feelings, and I'm not calling you or anybody else on the table, but I can certainly say that the tone of some of the meetings in the past have gotten to that point at times, whether it's an open session or whether it's closed session. And I just think that we really need to do a better job and be more respectful, and maybe stop and take a breath, or, and just understand that, we're all here to have a better district. We're here for the kids. And so it's as simple as that.
So to that end, I would simply say that, the invitation for a robust discussion would be that all parties, that if it's on the agenda, and unfortunately, as the chair, it rests with you.
No, I
And
understand
so
myself.
I'm not picking on you, I'm just telling you that if an agenda item is on the agenda and it's going to involve, and it's not just an administrator, it could be another member of the committee. I'm saying it really is something that, that should have been at least broached with them to make sure that they understood where we were going with that discussion, because I don't think it was, I just don't think it was fair to them to put them in that position. And again, a lot of this is, I don't mean to say theater, but I mean, the public is going to expect that robust discussion. And there are people out there that are going to be saying, well, wait a minute, you guys didn't even discuss this with them beforehand. And it makes us look sloppy, makes us look like we're not doing our job because we're not communicating with administration. And, there's people out there that would say that, the administration is gun shy to do anything because of the fact that, they're afraid that what's gonna happen to them is what happened to Lisa at the last meeting. She gets called out on stuff, and all of a sudden you've got members of the committee basically pointing fingers at them, and they have really no preparation. So I think it's a great first line. I think we just need to internalize it. I appreciate your points, and you're right, because sometimes meetings do get, discussions do get heated. I would say that, the concept of passion, I wouldn't discount that simply because, passion can be interpreted in many different ways. However, with respect to this particular line, I think it's great. Everybody on this committee needs to understand we are all working towards the same goal. And so if we create a situation in a committee meeting where there's confrontation and, it's about something that somebody hasn't been prepared for, it just makes us look disorganized. We want to make sure that when we present a discussion for our constituents at these public meetings, that we have a fair representation of everything that went into that decision and everything that went into that subject before we actually begin voicing our opinions on the public forum. That's all I got to say.
Like, so like all things, even if you don't agree. So just in general, like the committee, I think that it's important. So it's, I think in general, but I think it's also important too, that we agree to debate issues and not each other, because I think that's another thing that sometimes happens around the table. So, I think we're all always this,
Yeah,
we're
I
all
think
here
we're-
for positive intent, but I think sometimes people have gotten into debates with each other, and sometimes things get lost in the debate between people.
Yeah, but you understand, we're not people. We're elected, well,
But we're
elected,
people.
we're elected representatives that have a constituency that we are representing here, whether it's what we agree with or not, we're representing our constituency. So it's not necessarily something that, say Sean or Lisa or Bill want to get across. It's something our constituency wants to.
And I think the wonderful part about that is that we already have our direction.
Yeah.
Our direction is student achievement.
Yeah.
So there may be differing opinions on how we achieve that. But at the end of the day, our focus should always be on how we're going to make student achievement and student education better in our district.
I would say a good way of doing this in the future, if someone does feel that they are personally under attack or something like that, maybe just ask for a 1 minute calm down period instead of making accusations. You're saying this, you're doing this, which just escalates it. So if that is something that someone feels personally attacked, maybe we can say, hey, let's have a 1 minute cool down and then continue the conversation, because I don't want to stop conversation, but stopping the feeling of that you're being attacked. Yeah, okay. Did you see what I'm trying to get across here?
Yes, I'm just, to be
And
clear,
it's
I'm not talking about someone having hurt feelings. I'm just talking about, in general, I believe the school committee needs to be respectful and have a respectful tone and treat each other, well, with whatever word you need to fill in there. But I think that, over the last year, I think that didn't always happen. And it's, again, not about hurt feelings, but I do believe that we sit here and we are elected officials and we do set the tone. And I think that it's important that we communicate. We have to communicate clearly and effectively, but also respectfully. That's all.
So Michelle, the one thing I would add is how we communicate. I would like to see us add something in there on how we communicate with the superintendent and how we communicate with different functional leaders, because I think one of the challenges we have is that they're wildly different opinions on how that communication should happen. And it sometimes can be detrimental to the committee as a whole. So if we can add some language around that and come to consensus on what that looks like, I think that'd be incredibly helpful for us. It'd be incredibly helpful for John, for Aaron, for others as well.
Thank
Thank you.
was waiting for you to say something. I thought you were gonna say
Yeah, no, I was, so I would ask this too. I mean, again, you guys can rule me out of order on this. We talk about projecting, promoting a positive image of the district. This is something that's been on my mind for a long time, and Cheryl, you and I have had discussions about this too. I do think that, summer meetings provide a little bit of relaxation in terms of presentation. However, I do think appropriate dress for meetings is something that we really need to consider. When your students walk by this auditorium or by this library, and they see people dressed in ragtag clothes, I don't think it does a lot for the image of the district. I'm not saying you have to come in a suit and tie, but I think, having shoes, just appropriate,
I'm wearing
just
flip-flops, everybody.
appropriate wear. Well, like I said, summertime it's relaxed, but when we do have a meeting, we're a professional body. We're an elected body. I just, I would say that, having appropriate dress, I think would be something that would definitely reflect positively on the school committee.
So like, are we okay with like just referring to the term business casual?
Yeah, I mean, that's fine. I mean, I'm just saying, use.
I actually had several people in my first 2 years on the committee. I used to wear a button-down shirt and stuff like that, and I was asked dress like normal people dress. Don't try to dress over. It's like it makes it more intimidating. It's interesting that he says that, because I actually think the opposite. I think it's very refreshing that someone would come in flip-flops. I mean, it doesn't, Michelle, you matter. It doesn't matter what's on your feet, right? Maura, you matter. It doesn't matter what sweater you're wearing. Cheryl, you matter. It doesn't matter what glasses you're wearing, whatever. It just, that you're here is what's important, and that you're representing.
We don't get paid. There are some school districts that they get paid.
Lots of school districts get
We
paid.
volunteer.
Listen, I'm not gonna die on the hill about it. Like I said, it's just, if we are representing the school district, I just think that it's appropriate that we show up to meetings and we just have, at least somewhat appropriate attire. I don't think it's necessary that we need to be, wearing a suit and tie and, heels, but I do think that, that it does reflect positively on the district. There's a reason why teams have uniforms. There's a reason why those uniforms are clean and pressed, right? Because we want our organization to look like a professional organization. Like I said, I'm not going to die on it, but it's just something that's
I hear you.
on my mind. And then
I'm getting dress code flashbacks from my high school right now.
well, so yeah, well, the dress codes they're not entirely on. I mean, let's face it. I mean, for schools it's relaxed, but if you're in the business world, you don't show up for an interview wearing.
Sure.
Well, I've been a part of a couple interesting ones.
Yeah.
You're on teams.
So, and then the other part, again, not to belabor this, is the second of how we govern. We recognize the primary function of the Hammond Woodruff School District to establish policies for which the schools will be administered, to review and approve the district budget, to select, evaluate, and to set the compensation for the superintendent. We spend an awful lot of time outside of those lines. All right, and I brought this up at numerous meetings. And if we go down a little bit further, we say we understand that the administration and the conduct of the school business shall be left to the superintendent. And so, moving ahead with the new superintendent, it depends on, how strictly we want to enforce those guardrails. But as we spend an awful lot of time in the weeds on stuff that is really at the administrative level. If those are conversations that school committee members want to hold offline with individual members of the administration, they're perfectly able to do that. But I think, again, we need to remember where the parameters of the school committee are. And it's very specific. The Massachusetts Education Reform Act of 1993 specified this. And it was as much of a reform in how education is administered at the administrative level as it is at the instructional level, because it was painfully apparent that elected school boards had far too much influence on what was happening, not just at the education instructional level of the classroom, but even in terms of principals who were being selected. And there were many school districts in the state of Massachusetts that were suffering horrible consequences because elected officials were basically making decisions that should have been made by professional educators. So I would say, you know, every time we enter into a discussion about a particular item on the agenda, we really do need to ask, is it fitting into these, you know, into these parameters? And if it's not, what is the reason why we're doing that? And to have a discussion with administration, if it's something about budget, if it's something about curriculum, if it's something about student services, that we should reach out to those administrators and have a discussion with them beforehand. It certainly is something, I mean, we get the student services update from Tina, and those are fantastic, and the public needs to hear those. But those are, you know, those are discussions that are set up ahead of time, and they're very productive discussions. But, you know, it doesn't necessarily fall within the scope of the school committee, but as, you know, as an elected body, we have a responsibility to inform the public of what's happening within the school district, but without crossing those lines into now making decisions about what those administrators do. That's really all I have to say. I don't want to prolong the discussion.
The only addition I have also is to the how we communicate, the last section, just making sure that, I think it's, I might say it in there, but just making every effort to make, to be made, should be made to clearly indicate that they speak for only themselves. I think that's important. So oftentimes when a school committee member speaks, sometimes it could be construed as being the stance of the school committee. So again, whether we're, you know, making a statement to a news outlet or to one or, you know, the public, or to, you know, writing letters, if you want to, we talked about this last year, writing letters on your behalf, making sure that they know that it's on like your own behalf and not speaking on behalf of the school committee. And my other thing too is also wondering if we could do no cell phone or like texting or during meetings, unless it's like an emergency from our family, because it is, it can be, everything that you text is part of the public record, you know, so I know sometimes we, you know, have people that text us during meetings and whatnot, but I think it's important that, you know, we do focus on the meeting.
Well, sometimes I've received great questions that I've brought up during that, and it's always been something that I've struggled with. I mean, I'm not looking up, you know, if the Red Sox won or not or whatever. I'm you know.
Yeah, I think what she's getting to is active texting. I mean, you know, I've had people text me questions as well. It's, you know, and I agree 100%. I mean, last thing you want to do is have something.
And it's especially when you have somebody who's presenting and people aren't focused on the presenter or the person speaking, they're focused on something else.
And you'll find that, you know, at times you'll see, you know, if I'm scrolling through, I might be looking for a policy. I might be looking for,
Oh, yeah.
you know, something in Massachusetts general law, searching something pertaining to the discussion that we're having at the meeting. And
Now
I
you
think
got this
everybody does
big
that to a
book.
certain extent, but it's agreed. I mean, we should not be actively texting during the meetings.
The only exception really is if you have to use the calendar so we can figure out the next meeting date.
But that's not like actually
Yeah.
texting.
That's-
I just want to make sure people.
I mean, we'll reference our phone. I reference my phone.
I get what you're saying, but I mean, no one can stop me from texting, not that I'm going to, or no one can stop Laura from texting, or no one can stop Bill from texting. If we say, hey, listen, let's keep the texting down as a rule, you know, I get it, but this is not something that we can to the.
So again, these are our operating
Yeah.
norms,
Yeah.
right? So,
So we're asking that of each other, no one's saying you have to do something.
right.
But we're collectively, as a group or committee, agreeing that we will make all best efforts to do that. And if that means having to put your phone in your bag or back your chair or the floor.
But in terms of running an efficient meeting, it's certainly an efficient discussion. It certainly is a lot more conducive to that if people aren't distracted by what's on their device.
All right, any other comments? Concerns?
Nope.
So next is subcommittee updates.
Did
So-
you want to vote on those norms? Did you want to? I can't remember if we voted on them in the past.
Well,
But
Patrick
we
asked
didn't-
to
Yeah,
add
we're
some
gonna
updates.
So
Yeah, we
we're
can
gonna-
add and we
All
can look into that communication and look Basic more health policy on
Yeah, I'll look up the policy on the one that we're talking about. That other thing.
Okay, so I know none of the subcommittees have met. I don't know
No.
if anyone is planning on having any sort of
Not
meetings
yet.
anytime soon. We can talk about that at the next meeting. Let's move on to consent agenda.
I make a motion to accept the consent agenda.
Second.
Discussion.
Did you sign the warrants, Bill?
I don't know yet.
All right.
We do it all in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed?
Oh, I think because Patrick's here, we have to.
Oh, yeah, Patrick, you still on?
Aye.
Bill?
Aye.
Cheryl? John?
Aye.
Lisa? Aye. Laura?
Yeah,
Myself, aye.
Oh, just to make note, on Monday, I think we're getting another 20, 30 boxes from Amazon. So,
you know what's in said boxes
I have no idea.
and who do they get delivered to?
What do you mean?
Like, is it getting delivered to the school district themselves? Is it getting delivered to, I forget.
We pick it up.
Gina
We
Khan,
send,
to-
Ed goes down with the
Okay.
truck and he goes and he takes the
wanna say
boxes
it?
in the back. And they
If you
go
wanna
here
acknowledge
and
the
then
original.
we take them and we put them in the pantry or actually it's up to the superintendent to do whatever he wants with it.
Okay,
I mean, I try to help out when they do that, but when it comes to the HWRC, I just try to stay away.
Yeah.
Like I saw that they already had like 10, 15 boxes, but I just saw that I don't.
That's what I'm looking for right now.
It was in the,
It just sounded really.
it was on
odd.
the
Yeah.
online
Yeah, I
stuff.
don't think I found it
Take
yet. So we are pleased to report that the Hampton Wilbraham Regional School District has received a special donation, and per policy, the school committee votes to accept these generous gifts.
I make them,
As it is customary, please acknowledge and accept the following contribution. So the donor was John Cutting, and there was a piano that was donated to Minnetonka Regional High School, and the approximate value, do I have to say that? Or-
You don't have to.
Okay.
so moved.
Or did we already?
You already voted on it.
Because that's why it's
Perfect,
consent
yeah.
agenda, but I just wanted to acknowledge
Oh, sorry.
the fact that there was the piano donation and thank the donor,
That's
John
great.
Cutting,
Yeah, that's
for
right.
donating that piano.
Who donated
Thank
it?
you. John Cutting,
Okay. Thank you, John.
I believe a thank you note was that.
Yes.
So now we are on to future agenda items. This is just kind of we have the laundry list of agenda items from last
Yeah.
time. So if there's anything in addition to, they're not all on there, the ones that were listed, I do not believe. Or if there's anything else that has come up that you'd like to add.
John, what do you think of that grant writer position? Have you ever worked with a grant writer before?
I have, so I actually was having a conversation about this earlier in the day. I've had grant writer positions that were, or I have had one district where I had a grant writer that was a member of staff. And then I had another district where basically everybody was authorized to write for grants, and then they just had to be reviewed by the superintendent's office. In that case, we didn't need a grant writer, but what we needed was an extra staff for the business office to take care of all the reporting that goes with the grants, because that actually was quite successful in generating a lot of money, but it also generated a lot of work for the business office. So, I can work both ways, I guess what I'm saying.
So there's two things. It would be a grant writer and or
Grant writing.
a grant administrator. Right, so it's two different things.
Right, the grant administrator isn't on this list.
Right.
But I guess I'm just sharing my experience that if you do it sort of in a crowdsourced way, you may get a lot of grants that then end up having to get processed through the business office and create an extra burden for them.
Did you, with this grant writer position that you had, did you find that there was a greater variety of potential grants that would surface? One of the ideas that we had with regards to the grant writer position is that if we have a person who's a dedicated grant writer, that they may be able to dig into grants that maybe our administrators may overlook or may miss. Did you find that?
And be able to help write it too.
Hey, sorry, real quick, if we're gonna get into it, I would encourage this to be an agenda item and not right now when we're talking about what a future agenda item would be, just to keep us all on the straight and narrow.
Do them in the
So,
workshop one.
yeah,
And because it's 9 o'clock.
30 minutes late. Anything else, anyone else want anything added?
Goals, we're doing
Yep, so
Next
that's
time.
actually on the next agenda, yeah.
Motion adjourned.
Second,
Third.
roll call vote, Bill,
Aye.
Cheryl. Hi. Sean,
Aye.
Patrick.
Aye.
Aye. Laura,
Aye.
myself, aye. We are doing 9:01.